Welcome to People First Builders, celebrating leaders in construction who build success through their people. My name is Fletcher Wimbush, your host. I'm the CEO of Discover.ai, a performance hiring software helping small and mid-sized AEC companies solve their hardest problem, people. We help people first leaders install and execute repeatable talent acquisition systems that drive business results by hiring top performers, lowering turnover, and building world-class company cultures. Stick around to the end and you can learn more about how to become a guest on our podcast and share your story with the world. Welcome to the People First Builders podcast. My name is Fletcher Wimbush. I'm your host. Today, I've got Scott Menard with me. And Scott, you wear a bunch of different hats, but you're the president and chief operating officer for Homes Built for America. You're the CEO of Brighton Colson, general contractor, executive vice president for the True Life companies. And you have a long career starting back in college, I think it was with KB Homes. I saw there. You've been through all the big dog home builders, and you kind of obviously worked your way up through your career there into more of an entrepreneurial path. So you've been in this space for an awful long time. How did you end up with being so intimately involved in these three different organizations? I imagine they might be connected somehow.
Yeah, they're actually connected now. They weren't all at the very beginning. But yeah, I started this business when I was 17 years old, when I graduated high school, and I'm now 56. So I won't even tell you how long it is, but it's much longer than I ever thought I was going to be in the industry. Yeah, my grandfather built houses. My dad did for a while. My uncle was in the industry for a long, long time, and quite frankly, he got me in the business, and I've been in ever since, and I love it. True Life is a private company, and it started off really as a real estate development company. So we would buy a property, get it entitled, and then sell it to the top 25 national home builders.
Okay.
And then about 10 years ago, started up a general contracting company that was separate from True Life, and really started up with nothing. And over the course of the last 10 years, we built several large communities in Northern California and several office buildings and houses all over the Bay Area. And then 4 years ago, we started up Homes Built for America, as part of True Life. And because we had a general contracting business that I had started up, it actually is now wholly owned by True Life as well. So now we're vertically integrated. There's a lot of stories behind each one of them, but
Yeah.
spare you the detail.
Well, it sounds like you're addicted to home building. And
Yeah.
so what's next? Are you going to add to
They don't know. Probably start up a mortgage business. We'll probably do that. Who knows what? But yeah, we're gonna keep rolling with it. But yeah, it's fun because it's obviously it's a passion of mine. I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
And so and I've grown up in the home building industry. So like you said, I've worked for all the a lot of top 25 builders in the country, and so now that we're building our own company, it's just been really, really exciting. And I don't know where it's going to take us, but we've got big plans.
You hopefully get to take some of the best practices and some of the things that you don't do well, and you get to admit those and implement the best practices from the beginning.
Yeah, so it's the same, although I still make a lot of mistakes here and there. So I don't know.
Yeah, there's always something, going out on your own. There's plenty of lessons to be learned that, but that's a true story for everybody. But look, you are operating in the San Francisco Bay Area. Is most of your career been in operating in that kind of Northern California region?
Almost my entire career is in Northern California. I had a spell in Phoenix, Arizona, about 20 something years ago. So I spent a little bit of time there, but yeah, most of it's here in Northern California.
So if anybody's complaining about, conditions in the market or, labor issues, I mean, folks operating out of NorCal have got to have it the hardest, in my opinion. But maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think you're wrong. Of all the places I've been, and certainly the people I've talked to that work in other parts of the country, I think it's definitely one of the hardest markets to work in the country is San Francisco Bay Area and Northern California.
Yeah. I mean, forget the regulation piece of it. Maybe the people part of it is this unique component, I would imagine. I mean, how have you seen the war for talent in a ultra competitive market like the Bay Area? How has that evolved, over your career? Anything that, trends and how do you feel like it stands today,
Mm,
and how you have to deal with capturing talent? And I would assume you're dealing with a lot of much more construction management
yeah.
type folks, what kind of things have you seen evolve in your career?
Yeah, it's actually really interesting now you asked the question. It when I first started in the business, and again, this is back in the late '80s, it it was a legacy business, and it was one of those ones where it was a kind of a family tie kind of a thing. So you either started in the trades and you worked your way up into construction management, or it was really a lot of family members in the
Yeah. Like
in
you,
the family.
three generations or whatever, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's true probably of most industries, quite frankly. But it's certainly unique to ours. And but then you got through the late '90s, and then more people got attracted to it. But then we also had the .com, issue. It ended up being the .com bubble. But all of a sudden, high tech really just became such a big part of the Bay Area and Silicon Valley that you weren't really attracting talent to the space. But then in the early 2000s, you had the big home building boom, right? I mean, the country was on fire,
Yeah.
and so everybody was joining into the home building
Yeah.
industry. And so we had a lot of people entering, and it was great. People were doing mortgages, people wanted to be home builders. We were all growing. And so we had so much new talent joining that it was great. You found like, oh my God, here's like the new wave of people that are going to ultimately take over the industry someday. And then the great financial crisis hit,
Yeah.
and all of those new people to the industry just scattered
Yeah.
and changed and took on new jobs and new careers, and they never really came back. And so as we've been growing since the great financial crisis, I'll tell you, you talk to any, home builder, they'll tell you it's hard finding talent. It really
Yeah.
is. You
And I
there's
mean,
a
you're
real
you're
big
you're not just competing against other builders, right? I mean, you kinda touched on that in the starting in the early dot-com boom
yeah,
and bust in the late '90s and early 2000s, right? You started to already begin to see the talent get siphoned off out into other sectors, right?
yeah.
So,
Why couldn't work for this blue collar industry when I can go work for a high tech company? And quite frankly, they offer pretty good wages and benefits. And, you got to, you're in an office somewhere. Whereas, here we're obviously in an office, but we've also got construction projects. Yeah.
yeah,
It's not a sexy line of work unless you're in it and then you love it. But it's hard to attract people to this when you've got Silicon Valley, that's really a good carrot for a lot of people coming up.
so how have you guys dealt with the kind of probably some of the wage pressures? I mean, it's a supply and demand problem, and then it's accentuated by being in Northern California, where the cost of living is probably the highest or second highest, maybe next to New York City to
Yeah.
live in and operate in. So that must put a lot of pressure on you as a builder, as an owner, right? I mean, your people must demand a higher wage. How are you dealing with those kind of issues? I mean, and just a little quick side note, I was talking to an electrician friend of mine. He said like a journeyman, like I don't know, 5 to 10 year experience journeyman electricians making like damn near $200,000 a year in NorCal.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Same thing with your journeyman plumbers and journeyman carpenters. Absolutely. They
Yeah.
make a really good, compelling wage. And the same really is true even of, the people here in the office. I mean, yeah, we have to pay very competitive rates to get people to work here. And the office flexibility thing is still something I'm personally struggling with because I'm a total in the office kind of a person.
Yeah.
Um, but in the Bay Area at large, remote work is still pretty allowed. And I even know a lot of my, you know, friends of mine that work at the other home builders, they have flexible work hours, and I'm unfortunately not built that way. Here, we like everybody here, but yeah, I have to compete against the Bay Area where it's allowed.
Yeah, because their significant others, their cousin, their brother, their friends, they're all allowed to work at home, and they're like, "Why are you making me come to the office then?"
Yeah, especially for certain departments like accounting, it's
Mm,
pretty common to work
yeah,
from home. And I just think there's something vibrant and you get a lot of energy by having people around. So we're in the office. And so I'll tell you, we do have a tough time recruiting people because of that policy.
yeah,
And that is one of our biggest challenges for sure.
yeah, yeah. But how have you guys dealt with this sort of, massive wage inflation or wage pressure, piece of that? I mean, those are enormous wages you're talking about in the trades, and I imagine you're seeing that in the construction management for professionals that you're probably dealing with and other folks that you have in your type of office, how have you guys dealt with that in order to keep up or justify it? Because if I said that to somebody in even Texas, who, I mean, they have a huge construction boom in Texas,
Yeah.
they're not, they've seen wage pressures, but they're not hitting like your levels in NorCal.
No.
How do you deal with that as a business owner and strategically deal with that so that you can continue to run and operate a profitable business and keep your people by offering competitive wages? Mm.
Yeah, the truth be told, we'll pay the competitive wage and in many cases pay a little bit more to make sure we get the right person to make sure that they don't leave. I mean, it's one of those things where you got to go pay for the talent and you go get it.
Yeah,
But if you get the right people, you don't need as many people.
yeah,
And I think that's kinda how you make it, and so when you just have really top talent, and I think we do, I mean, I'm really happy with our staff.
yeah,
You'll pay a little bit more, but it's worth it because then you get it and you don't have the turnover and you just also just have the professionalism and these people can get stuff done, and it's awesome.
yeah. So to pay in the 75th or 90th percentile is worth every penny is
Yeah,
the flip side. I mean, so think about the turnover side, that creates an opportunity cost or cost of
yeah.
some source of lost opportunity of revenue or a lost chiseling into the bottom line of some sort, right? How have you looked at that then and compared that, thought through, justified saying, you know what, I'm going to bite the bullet and, maybe push my wage scale up.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, you don't certainly start there, you end there, right? I
Yeah.
mean, when we started, even, when I first got to True Life, over almost 13 years ago, we couldn't pay top wages. We just didn't have that kind of capital to do that. Same thing when we started Brighton Colson, we were on a shoestring budget.
Mhm.
And so it was hard getting people. And then when you got them, there was turnover, at both companies and even at Homes Built for America. And you kind of have to get a little, mature and get
Yeah.
capital under your feet. And then once you do, then you kind of build up to that point to where you can start paying for the top talent.
Yeah.
But I would tell you each company, it took a good 5 to 10 years to get there. And so at the very beginning, when you're starting a company, you have to be prepared that you can't pay the overly competitive rates and you're going to probably have turnover. I mean, that's just part of starting a
Yeah.
company from the ground up.
And how does turnover affect profitability, growth in in your space? I mean, how do you perceive that looking at it from a strategic perspective? What effect is that having on you guys?
Yeah, no doubt it was a drain on resources. I don't know how it affected profitability. I'm sure it did, but it was also kind of a cost of doing business. So you knew that was going to happen. But it was really more about being a drain on resources because, as people leave the company, it's hard to go find a replacement. Takes a while to train them up. And so there's certainly an opportunity cost, of that. Um, but again, I think we kind of knew that it was going to be that way for a
Yeah.
while, you know?
Yeah. So the kind of maybe the emotional toll that takes on everybody else having to
Yeah.
go double duty or whatever, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, I might have had a different answer for you 20 years ago, but, because I'm older and I've been with a lot of companies that have grown, it's like I've already kind of been there, done that. So we kind of knew what
Yeah.
we were in for when we were starting these companies.
Well,
Although
so
I'll tell you, I think
yeah.
the hardest part though is, when you're a private company and you're starting up, you have to have that entrepreneurial spirit. And I'll tell you, that's been one of the hardest things to find people that are really built for that.
Yeah.
A lot of people, they tell you they are, but they're not. They're used to working for big companies. They like the safety of that, even though I would argue I don't think there's anything safe about a big company.
Yeah.
Um, there's that comfort people have with that, and when you go work for a small company, it's entrepreneurial. Like every penny matters because it's like you're growing and you need those dollars to grow. And you have to be very penny wise and just not everybody's really built for that. And it's been really interesting.
Yeah.
But then when you find those people, you don't let them go. You do not let them go.
Well, in tech, they have this was kind of I think it was Brian Chesky, the Airbnb guy, coined this phrase in some speech that he was giving or a paper he wrote, and he called it founder mode, right?
Yeah,
And that translates to any business, but in the tech business, they sort of have this kind of culture, right, of like you burn it at every end of
Yep.
and you grind and you grind and you work your tail off, right?
Yeah,
And whether
absolutely.
you're building a construction company or really any kind of business, you probably have experienced that if you're an entrepreneur listening to this, right? And And when you're growing, you obviously need people who are going to come along for that ride and be inspired and invigorated and excited about that, and then willing to put the time and effort in, right?
Right. Absolutely. And you bring up a good point because, obviously here in the Silicon Valley, yeah, we're used to startups. So I actually have several friends that have gone to work for startups over their career. And yeah, you kind of know you're going to take a little bit less and they'll offer you a lot of big stock options.
Yeah.
But you'll go kill yourself for it. And whereas in the home building space, that doesn't really happen very often. So,
Yeah.
when it does, it's not like everybody comes jumping your way because, ooh, there's a home builder startup, but if you say it's a high tech startup or an AI startup, everybody wants to jump, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, we just don't have, like I said, that sex appeal.
Well, at least in a lot of construction environments, there is a lot of incentive-based pay. So get that project done on time, under budget, and then some incentive to work your tail off and to put
Yeah.
the extra effort in, go the extra mile, because it does generally have pretty nice backside incentives if you're really delivering a high quality product on time and under budget, right?
Yeah, our industry is known for paying pretty good bonuses,
Yeah,
for people who excel.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah. Well, I think that's, pretty interesting. Well, what about on the product side or the pricing side? Again, I think about this, the wage piece of this. I see companies maybe get behind in pay. The thought of having to raise everybody's pay at once, that's obviously, how do you do that? You really can't, you get caught behind the eight ball in that sense. And then there's obviously another side of that as well. If your cost of doing business goes up, then obviously that those costs inevitably get passed along in some way or have to be made up through in some other efficiency. So you nailed one thing that I think is really important. High quality people paid more, get more done. You need less people. There's less turnover. There's less problems. There's less bottlenecks. There's more on time, under budget deliveries with hopefully people are going well or
Yeah.
are high performers, so that's an optimization piece. But I imagine at the end of the day, though, there still is a cost inflation to the customer. And that's something I think as entrepreneurs, as business owners, that's a hard pill to swallow. Like, I don't want to raise my prices and potentially scare away customer. How have you dealt with that, facing that thought or, those issues potentially?
Yeah, quite truthfully, we've had to cut in other places.
Yeah.
So, some of the things we used to take for granted out here, yeah, we've had to make some sacrifices and cuts on things in the office. Because we did just give everybody a raise earlier in the year. Obviously with inflation over the last couple of years and we hadn't been able to do that. And this year we finally realized we need to fix everybody.
Yeah.
Because the inflation certainly outstripped the wages in the last 2 years. So we did that, but in so doing, we cut back on some other things we were doing to make sure we had room to handle that.
Yeah.
Because with real estate, a house is worth, it's always a market driven price on a house. And things have been a little tough this last year on sales prices if you've been watching the headlines. So
Yeah.
it's not like we can just pass that cost savings to the consumer. You can't because the market dictates what houses sell for. So we've just had to cut other places internally, and it's fine.
Yeah, and that's one of the challenges in construction space, right? The market does often demand the price, right? Unless you're building data centers, I suppose, right? You're
Yeah.
you're beholden to that. So how do you get leaner? How do you get more efficient then in order to, retain a high performing, team of A players? What are the things that you do to kind of get more efficient without, be able to pay the people better, but not increase the overall cost of, building a new home, right?
Yeah, well, it gets back to what I said earlier. I've always had the philosophy, go get the right people because if you have the right people, you don't need as many people.
Yeah.
And honestly, that's really what's saving the day. I mean, that's what or carries the day. I
Yeah.
mean, that is it. We've got some people that can just totally perform here in this company. So
Yeah.
we can take on a lot. I mean, for instance, we this Homes Built for America didn't exist 4 years ago.
Yeah.
It actually originated coming out of COVID. And we had a couple projects we wanted to build, and we started, and we went from nothing to after 4 short years, we're the 14th largest home builder in the San Francisco Bay Area, and we're 171st in the country. We didn't exist.
Yeah.
And it's all because and if you came into our office, we're pretty lean and mean,
Yeah.
and it's by design.
Right.
We don't need a whole staff of people. We just need the right people. And so that's really what's allowing us to scale and be really efficient, quite frankly. In fact, I'd argue I'm kind of overstaffed. I think these people are capable of a heck of a lot more than
Yeah.
we're doing now. So, I mean, we purposely picked the people for growth.
Ah, nice. Being vertically integrated, has that helped you guys?
A lot, a lot.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
imagine.
and it's one of the reasons why we did it, and it's why we started the general contracting business, um, 10 years ago, because we knew we needed to get that experience and horsepower. And quite frankly, that one had a lot of attrition at the very beginning.
Mhm.
And it's taken a lot of years to really attract just some great people. And they've been with us now for, several years. And so now, once we knew we could do the general contracting, then we knew we were ready to start the home building company
Yeah.
because we did want to be vertically integrated. And eventually we'll be bringing even more things that are being outsourced right now. We'll be bringing them in house over time.
What are like 2 or 3 tips to find and attract? And then we can maybe talk about a couple of things that you've done to retain folks.
Yeah, to find and attract, I'll tell you, we've really gotten down to a lot of just referrals. If there's somebody here in the company or there's somebody we know in the industry and they refer somebody to us, we take it really serious. That has been our best bet on bringing in really good employees and
Yeah,
top talent
yeah,
is referrals.
that's
And so
good.
we've used outside recruiters at times, but I'll tell you, the group we have here, I think almost every single one of them has been through a referral.
Yeah, yeah.
And then now what we're doing is, I'm spending a lot of time on trying to bring in the whole next generation of
Mm.
people into the business, and I think it's one thing I think our industry does not do a very good job of,
Yeah,
is attracting, these young kids
that's
growing
younger
up,
talent.
going to college, wanting to get in here, and I personally, it's my mission. It's something I take very serious, and I go out of my way to find people who wanna come into the business, and so we've got several young people who just recently graduated from college. We do, um, a lot of internships in the summers
Okay.
for people in college that are just interested, because I know once I get them here, they love it, and then they always
Yeah.
wanna come work here when they graduate.
It is an addicting business, I think.
It is. It's building houses for people, it's rewarding,
Yeah.
and I mean, it's not altruistic as much as, but it's a really good feeling knowing that people are living in your houses and I always call us, we're a memory factory
Yeah.
because, we build things for people to go build memories in. And, it's cool knowing that people get promotions in our houses, and we have a lot of people having babies in our houses because
Wow.
we focus on first time buyer type houses.
Yeah.
So it's all these young couples and partners who move in and they have their dog, and the next thing you know, they're pregnant, and then they're having
Yeah.
kids, and we have homeowners association meetings, and they're there, and you see these families growing and new cars out in front, and it's fun. It's like we're part of that. It's super cool. And like I said, if I can get people here, then they stay.
Yeah.
And and then you end up loving the industry and you never leave it. It's just, but we got to get them in first.
Yeah. Well, I love the referrals. I mean, how have you nurtured or created that, enabled this culture of referrals? I mean, I'm sure and to some degree in every business it starts maybe a little bit naturally, especially in really small businesses. But is there anything you've been able to do to encourage it or foster that kind of culture of referrals to really maybe do anything to kind of supercharge that a little bit?
Yeah, actually, it's a good question. I think just my knee jerk response is, I think, we spend a lot of time on the culture. And I think, and people like working here, like we have a really good gig going. Like everybody likes working here. We all like each other.
Yeah.
We have potlucks every once a month just because we all like hanging out together and bringing in food, and and I just think that's become infectious. Like we all really care about each other, and so people want to work here. So I think that has a lot to do it, because it's nothing actually intentional
Yeah.
that's causing the referrals. It's just, but it's kind of worked out that way, and so I like to think the culture has a lot to do with it.
Yeah. So what have you done to foster that culture or kind of create this team of people who, really like working together?
Yeah, well, I'm sure just like you, I've worked at some companies where the cultures weren't so great, and you couldn't wait to go find another job. And, I mean, there's goods and bads about having a career where you've worked at a lot of different companies. And it's like, many of them were fantastic that it's like, God, if I could ever replicate that, and so much starts with the leader, but so much starts with the senior management and the philosophies it, and, once you kind of foster that, and you know how important it is, and you start, respecting the fact that, we all spend more time at work than we do at home with our families, so
Mm.
you better like the people at work. And, and you'll hear people always go, "Oh, I don't wanna work with a bunch of assholes," and it's like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, I don't either," and it's like, "So let's just not do it." You mind? So let's just get a bunch of great people who are here, and if, every now and then when you have somebody who comes in who's just not a well fit, then and you need to exit them, and don't let anybody ever poison the culture. And it's like,
Yeah.
once you realize that's priority number one, then the rest of it kind of starts to take care of itself. And, like I said, you learn that the hard way, because I worked at some companies where they were really good at driving people hard, just burning them and spitting them
Yeah.
out. It's like, that's great if you're a startup and, the plan is just to get out of the thing in 3 to 5 years. But if you're trying to build a forever company like we are doing, then you know what? Then you need to be in it for the long haul and make sure you're setting it up so people want to be there for the long haul.
Yeah, well, you can work hard and still enjoy the people that you work with and have a great culture. I mean, I always think about this Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and they had this like the bureaucracy, and they got to stamp everything in triplicate, right? And then like the bureaucrat is this like bad stinking attitude about how you get things done, right?
Yeah.
I always think that's like one of to me is like the most toxic thing inside of an organization. Not, yeah, but I love that image of that movie of that book, if you've ever read it.
Oh, no, totally true. Or same thing, I always think of Joe versus the volcano, right, with Tom Hanks, and, where he's just sitting in that, fluorescent lit, basement, in his cubicle, and you're like, "Oh my god, I can't even imagine what that's like." And,
Yeah,
so just don't create an environment where that happens.
yeah. So keep the toxic people out, and
Yeah,
make it fun to get things done and make it efficient, and
yeah.
and empower people, and good things typically manifest from that.
Okay.
Well, that's awesome. Well, Scott, how can folks get in touch with you if they're interested?
Actually, just reach out. My email address is smenard, MENARD, at homes, HOMESBFA.com. And yeah, if they're interested, happy to talk to them. And like I said, I'm always recruiting kids out of college. Always, always, always. Because I know if I can get them in the business, they'll stay in the industry. And whether they work for me, it doesn't matter, as long as we can get them and attract them. Because like I said, it's a noble business. It's fun. It's
Yeah.
great. And, I just, wish more people would want to do it.
So if you're a young kid and you want a job, I mean, there you go. Just
Yeah.
send a cold email and you'll probably get a response. I would imagine, right?
Absolutely.
Show a little bit of initiative, and good things will happen, and you probably have a job this summer or this winter if you want, maybe. Right?
Absolutely. I do. I've already got people who reached out to me for next summer. So,
Yeah,
I'm
Yeah.
all game. It's great.
yeah, that's awesome. Well, that's definitely a big theme. And Scott, I really appreciate you sharing some of your insights, some of your experiences, getting a little vulnerable with me here today. This is a tricky business, and so
It is.
I appreciate it very much.
Oh, Fletcher, I really enjoyed talking with you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for listening to our People First Builders podcast. If you're a successful construction CEO and would like to tell your story on this program, please visit our podcast homepage, FletcherWimbush.com/peoplefirstbuilders, or check it out in the notes below. If you got something out of this interview and would like to share the episode on socials, we always appreciate that. Just take a quick screenshot with your phone, text it to a friend, or post it to the socials. If you know someone who might be a great guest, tag them on social and let them know. And don't forget, #PeopleFirstBuilders. I love seeing your posts and guest suggestions. We're regularly putting out new content. To make sure that you don't miss out on any episodes, go ahead and hit subscribe on your favorite podcast channel. Your thumbs up and ratings and reviews go a long way to help promote the show and mean a lot to me and my team. Want to know more? Go to our website, FletcherWimbush.com, or follow me on LinkedIn. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.